Okay. It sounds like everybody's here that's going to be here, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. First, has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes last? I'm not going to ask you to approve the minutes yet, but look and make sure you're at the same address that you were for the last meeting, so we can save the time of having to check in and give all of our addresses. I'm at the same address, Jordan, so if everybody else is, we can skip that part.
I'm at the same address.
Me too.
Okay, it sounds like that's taken care of. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yes.
Anyone, does it look okay? Anyone have any suggestions or changes?
No.
No.
Then I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? We have two sets of minutes for the board to consider. If there are no changes or no questions, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. K for, I'm sorry, the chair report first. I don't have much to report. I would like to commend Dr. Brumfield and everyone who's been involved in the task force meetings. We have created some, I think three, isn't that right? 3 different task forces that we're trying to work on some specific issues, and Dr. Brumfield has put all this together. And despite her condition, her health issues that she's having to fight now, she's done a real good job of getting everything together. And our school leaders and our other people who are participating in the task forces are really doing a good job. I can't wait for everything to get finished and deliver the reports to the rest of the board, because they're really doing a very good job, and I'm proud of the work they're doing. So with that, Dr. K, would you give us the executive report?
Sure. Really, I don't have a whole lot on my report today, but one of the main things I wanted to share is that, as you all know, as a board, the authorizer gets a portion of its funding by a 3% fee that we charge the schools. And this year, there was some conversation about how we might be able to support them by eliminating some of the cost, and maybe relieving them with the budget cuts that have come and the challenges that are coming. Was there a way that we could really do that? And the short answer is really not legally, but I worked with PEER and worked with the PEER committee and my legislative analyst over there, Julie, and asked her to do some research for us. I asked her to go in and look at, can we legally this year get by with not charging against the EEF funds? And for those of you that are not familiar with that, that would be the educational enhancement funds, and those go directly to the teachers. And so I felt like it was not really appropriate to charge. If you guys can mute, please, if you're not speaking, thank you. But not to charge against those EEF funds if we didn't have to. So we got a response back from PEER and from my analyst, and she said that the MAEP folks over there at the PEER committee had discussed it, talked about it, and that they were giving us that grace this year. So for FY20, we are not going to have to charge the schools against the EEF funds that are related to MAEP, which will give the teachers more money, the schools more money, and so it'll be a benefit to the schools. Now, Having said that, we do have to go out for an AG opinion for FY21, but for at least FY20, all of the schools will have a reduced authorizer fee for this year, which should give them some relief.
That's great work. Good job.
So, thank you. The other thing is the peer review itself, which is statutory. The peer committee has to do an annual analysis of our spendings and our work, our contracts. They look at every single thing that we do. They look at every contract, every expenditure, everything that the authorizer has done during the course of a year. And so they go back and analyze everything, and then it's a report that goes to the legislature by statute. Not every state agency is analyzed every year, but when the law was written back in 2013, that was a portion of the law. So we do get that. Julie is my primary analyst. She and I have a great working relationship. Her partner is Jennifer, and we work really well together through that process. So they provide recommendations on what might be more beneficial in terms of efficiency for the agency, and we've taken some of those recommendations already and put those into practice and into place, and then we've made some adjustments based on some of the recommendations from last year and previous years. Denise is an incredible help through this entire process because she keeps up with all of our financials, and she helps with everything we do related to the peer report. So that'll be ongoing. It's a pretty extensive process, but it'll be ongoing for the next few weeks and probably into the months after September. The other thing I wanted to say was thank you to the committees. We have been working, committees have been working, the applications committee, the performance and accountability committee have been working on things throughout the past month, and I much appreciate your work during these challenging times. It's hard to get together. It's hard to sit down at a table and work, eye to eye, knee to knee, and try to do things through email and through Zoom is a little bit more complicated. So I appreciate your work, and I appreciate your support and looking at documents and reviewing documents, whether it was the timeline for renewals or the renewal information that I sent to the to the Performance and Accountability Committee, or the annual report, or whatever that document was. I really do appreciate your input and your help. And so thank you to all of you, and a special thanks to the schools. They have been working under such incredible conditions this year that no one has ever had to deal with. And I know they're all exhausted and trying to get school started and trying to prepare for things in a different way. So a special thanks to them for all their hard work on behalf of the children of Mississippi. And that is my report.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a financial report?
I do have one.
Okay.
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. I just want you to know that we've only spent, since you last met, about $32,000. Most of that was for salaries and a little bit of operating expense. All of those funds came out of the state general fund. We still have some bills that we need to pay for FY20. We have until about August 17th. And so we're still making some payments against the prior year. And we've already started with putting contracts in for the current year for FY21, just to get that ready to go. The federal expenses since your last board meeting were $228,000. We've also processed some additional claims in the last couple of days since this report was prepared against the FY20 year. And so I think we finally are just about finished with our FY20 federal expenses. The federal expenses are reimbursed at the end of every month. And so Vanda does a really good job of making sure that she gets that reimbursement from what we've paid out. And so that money comes back in by the end of the month. We last time said that we would probably have about $63,000 in unspent authority, and that projection has not changed. We still think we'll be under budget by about that much. The cash balance to go into FY21 will be approximately $343,000. And so we're in good shape there. And the revenue estimates were originally projected at 470,000 off of those MAP 3% funds, but that number will change as Dr. Kay's already mentioned. And so we'll have that number more laid out in the next couple of days and know exactly what we'll get from each school. And so that's really the report for FY20. If you don't have any questions, I can go into what we're projecting for FY21 and the budget. You ready for me to do that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So at the last meeting, we talked about what the appropriation looked like, and we thought we were going to be at the exact same spot that you were in FY20 for FY21. We mentioned that Dr. Comacheri had met with your legislative analyst and had a really good working relationship. But in the last days of this session, almost every state agency's budget was cut, and y'all were cut 3% in your general fund, which was just $7,110. And so your general fund appropriation for this current year is down, and it will be $229,890. We did not get a reduction in our special funds, which is the money you get from MAP and donations or anything else. So that stayed at $500,000. So the total appropriation for FY21 is $729,890. Dr. Comacheri and I spent some time last week working on what our budget should look like, and I would like to present that to y'all. And I think you had that in your packet. What we did last year is we took that appropriation and really thought about what our expenses were going to be, what our operating costs needed to be, and we did not build a budget internally for the entire appropriation. We took that same approach again for FY21, and we have factored into all of the contracts that have already been let, the ones that we know that we need, some things that were projected to happen last year that we would like to do that did not occur, like maybe getting some legal assistance and things like that. And so we've come up with a budget that is in your packet, and that recommended budget is for only $509,807. That is less than what was approved for FY20's budget by the board. Last year you were at 530 instead of 509 like we have now. We are projecting that we will have more than we expended in FY20 in our budget, but a lot of that's because we didn't have a lot of expenses at the last quarter of the year because there was no travel. There was, a lot of things that were put on hold because of COVID. So we feel like that's a pretty good budget. And we've got some specific line items if y'all would like an explanation about anything that's in there.
My only question is the carryover from last year, the 533,000 from last year, is that going to add to the 509, or is that going to be used to cover the 509,000?
Okay. What you have is the carryover of 343,000 in cash. You don't carry over spending authority. And
okay.
Does that make sense? So your spending authority is the 729,000, but we're only recommending a budget with the 509, and that's made up of your general fund and your special fund carryover.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
And I'm assuming that's an action item for y'all to vote on. So.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept this budget as it's been presented?
Jennifer
moved.
made the motion.
Okay, the motion's been made. Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Can I confirm Jennifer made the motion, Jean seconded? Is that
Yes.
right?
That sounds good.
I got it. Thanks.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the budget will be adopted.
That concludes my report and y'all's action. So I'm going to just tell y'all goodbye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Denise.
Okay, thank y'all.
Okay, next we will go into the committee reports. Dr. Kay?
Yeah, thank you. So for our action item or committee report here, applications committee, we have the 2020 Health and Quality Schools. This will be the stage 2 threshold quality review report. And Sarah from SchoolWorks is going to be with us to share that information prior to the vote during new business.
Great. Hello, everyone. My
Hi.
name is, how's everyone today?
Good.
Oh, great. My name is Sarah Rapay. I'm a managing director with SchoolWorks, and I am project managing this. There's a team of about 4 of us who are reviewing the applications according to the evaluation criteria. Within your board packet on page 20 is the first report, and that is for Southwest Leadership Academy. If you flip to the next page, you will see that the recommendation from the review team is to not proceed to stage 3. This applicant group met one threshold area, the threshold 1. The remaining 4 areas that they were evaluated against, they were deemed substantially inadequate. So they are being recommended to not proceed to stage 3. The next report is found on page 22, and that is for SR1. This applicant group was rated adequate in all 5 areas evaluated and is being recommended to proceed to stage 3 review. And then the final, let me just briefly tell you, SR1 would be located in Canton Public School District and eventually would be a K-5 school, with a enrollment at scale being 450 students should they be awarded a charter. And then the final group is Voices for Education. They will be grades 7 through 12. Enrollment at scale would be 300 students. The district served would be North Boulevard Consolidated School District, and they also are being recommended to proceed to stage 3. They similarly were deemed adequate in all 5 threshold areas that they were evaluated against. So that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Okay, does the school that was recommended to not proceed to stage 3, are they going to be, I mean, do they go through a reapplication process from the beginning, or can they pick it up where they are right now for the next time around?
Lisa, do you want to answer that, or you?
Either way, I'm happy
Whoever.
to. Yeah, so what will happen is they will not move forward throughout the rest of this cycle this year. If they choose to reapply again for next year, then they'll be eligible to reapply. But for this year, this will be the end of their process through the cycle.
And then next year they'll be starting from the beginning. They'll be
Yes,
starting
they
from scratch.
would.
Okay,
Yes, if they choose to apply again, then yes, sir, they would start through the new process.
okay. I guess we need a motion to. Do we need to approve these?
We will during new business.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Okay, so then the next section would be the Performance and Accountability Committee, the report from that one. And the first item under there is the 2019 annual report, and Ms. Cook is going to give us an update on that.
Okay, thank you. So the annual report is almost finalized. It looks like it's just the final touches are being put on it before going to print. By law, it is due to the legislature by October 1st, so it's well ahead of schedule there. This year's report is really filled with a lot of very easy to understand trend data on student performance and comparisons between student outcomes in the charter schools and their corresponding school districts. And there is, in this year's report, there's more data to analyze than the previous year, and that gives the authorizer and the stakeholders a really comprehensive look at the growth of the charter community and the successes over time. Finally, the report looks really, really great. It'll be posted on the website and distributed to the legislators, like I mentioned, and the media. and other stakeholders. It has great photos of real students in real schools, which I love, and really good graphics, and it's very well written. I think it's really tells a good story about the charter schools and the work of the board, and the authorizer rather. So I look forward to, everyone having it in their hands. And, please, if I left anything out about that, Dr. K, just chime right in.
No, thank you. The only thing I would say was that we had a lot of debate on what picture to use on the cover, because all three of the pictures were were really good. And so there was a tie, and I'm just going to say that Jennifer's grandchild probably broke the tie for us. So that was the winning picture, and I think everybody will be super pleased with it. It's a beautiful document, and like Jean said, it's got some really robust information in it. And the data is excellent. The trends are great. It shows the success over time. So the longer you're in a charter school in Mississippi, the better you do. And that's what we want to see, a lot of growth and a lot of success. So thank you guys for your support on that.
Thank you. Is there any other, anything else to talk about under the committee reports?
Just the renewal timeline. The other thing that the performance and accountability got was some information about renewals during COVID. That's been a real hot topic among other authorizers and throughout the nation. And so I was able, with some help from the National Resource Center, to gather some information from SUNY and Colorado and Tennessee to see what they were doing around renewals. And so the Performance and Accountability Committee gave me their feedback on that. And our recommendation will be to move forward with our renewal with Milo Prep for this year, understanding that timeline may have to be tweaked some. Even though it's statutory, we may have to come back and ask for a waiver, depending on what falls out with COVID. That there will be some things that we won't be able to report on. Where there's no data, we won't have data, right? So everybody understands that it'll look different and feel different than it has in the past. But just wanted to make sure that that we were good on moving forward with the board's permission to move forward on renewal.
Is that something you need the board to vote on?
I would like for the board to take action on that, if they would, please.
Okay, can I have a motion to allow the process to go forward on the renewal?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Dr. K, proceed.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is new business. And under new business, you'll see 3 areas related to the charter contract. If you remember last time we met, we talked about the new charter contract. And after we had our conversation, we got some feedback from some of the schools through our Zoom check-ins, and then some other processes where we received some feedback. We had a couple of schools we didn't hear from, but a couple of schools we did. And so, taking into consideration some of their thoughts and their concerns around what was in the contract, we went back and looked at that. And we have 3 separate recommendations to the contract that's been revised that we would like the board to consider removing and or changing. So under item A, charter school contract revisions, item I, we would like the board to consider removing that the schools follow all the policies in the Department of Education Financial Handbook, including the appropriate use of charts, accounts, and grant codes. And that's found on page 27. Do you want to look at that? The financial reporting for our annual charter school proposed preliminary budget, we would like to add the word preliminary instead of just proposed, and that would be due on June the 1st. And finally, the annual audit would be due September the 30th instead of September the 15th. The rationale for that not being on October the 1st is because the statute says it's due October the 1st. So it has to be due to the authorizer on September the 30th. and that would give schools 2 additional weeks. In light of what we looked at last month, it would give them 2 additional weeks. So I would like the board to consider those 3 items in light of the contract revisions for this series of contracts.
Do we need to consider them separately? Well, let me ask a question first. The very first one, where you're removing the schools shall use and follow the financial, the chart of account and grant codes. Is that going to address the issue that we talked about that one of our schools had with the contract, or is that just a general change?
That I don't know if everybody's on. We're getting some feedback. I don't know if everybody's on mute, but if you're not, if you could mute yourself, please, unless you're speaking. To answer your question, Mr. Billingsley, yes, that was one of the areas of concern that one of our members had in particular, one of our schools had in particular around that. There were other schools that had some, I think, some concerns around that as well. It's a transitional reporting change that was recommended by peer, and it was probably the only really substantive change, in the contract. So our goal is to move toward that based on peers' recommendations, but to allow some time to transition into that. So schools would have at least a year to work on that transition as opposed to having to adopt that change immediately.
I see. Okay. Would you like, should we go at these separately, or can we go ahead and approve them all 3 at once?
Avery, I'm going to lean on you for that, but I feel like we can probably accept all 3 of these in one motion.
You may.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to accept these 3 changes as has been presented.
I so move.
And do we have a second? There were 2 motions. One of you seconded.
Oh, I second.
Did we go? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like that will really help our schools feel better about that contract, those changes and the dates. It'll give them a little bit more time to transition, number one, and then for the reporting, that will help with that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
So,
the schools, I'm sorry, and I apologize for it. Are the schools able to talk to the board on the matter of the contract?
Mr. Billingsley, you'll need to address that, but
Yes.
no, not during the meeting.
No, not today during the meeting. We can, but there are mechanisms in place where the schools can communicate with the board or with the charter, with the authorizer board, or with the individual board members if you would like to, and that hasn't changed.
Okay, and we did send some feedback on the contract, so I just want to ensure that that's being considered, the contract feedback we provided last week.
Yes. The feedback that you have, what your contract, I apologize, but I'm not sure which contract you're talking about. Is this the one that was extended to July 31st? Dr. Chira, was this? Okay, so there are still, we still have this week to address the changes that you've, the changes that you've proposed for that contract, and we will get back to you before then. Any other questions? Okay. Dr. Chira, can you continue?
I can. Okay, so on page 28 in your packet, you will find where we are beginning our request for waivers. And these waivers are going to be related to our performance framework for this year, because all of our schools are required to have an annual evaluation based on the framework. and that is due on or before September 30th of each year. Well, with the COVID and all of the challenges around opening school and all of the challenges around closing school early on, we recognize that in addition to the waivers that the Mississippi Department of Education has requested and been approved, that we also need to do that as well. And so we put together a list of proposed suspensions for business rules related to the framework. And if you'll look on page 28, the first 4 there are around academic performance, the school accountability letter, proficiency and growth, and academic goals. You'll note in the right-hand column there that on March 27th, the Department of Education actually received official approval from USDE regarding that request and was given permission to waive the accountability classifications for 1920 because we did not give tests for 1920. And so that would be the same for us. We would not be able to report anything other than the previous year's accountability results. So that would be our ask on there, that we would be able to waive that and not hold schools accountable for any type of school letter or proficiency or growth in that they were not tested. The same would be on page 29 with respect to subgroup performance on growth and subgroup proficiency. And then found on page 30 for 2021, moving into 2021, we would like the board to consider waiving the performance score indicators under educational program requirements around attendance, where the schools are required to meet an attendance daily goal or daily attendance of 90% or better. We would like to waive the teachers and administrators credentialing requirements for 2021, the re-enrollment of a high percentage of students and percentage of students returning to school that are not enrolled in a terminal grade. So we would like the board to consider that. And then finally to consider the transfer rates, all within the performance framework. So this would give flexibility to the schools and give them some really sense of, okay, we're not going to be held accountable for this year.
Are there any questions about those requested waivers? If not, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve all the waivers and the requests.
So moved.
Thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next section then would be the statement of assurances for accountability. This is something that we have not done in the past, and we'd like the board to consider this. There are several items on the annual framework, on the accountability performance framework, that will be difficult to track, difficult to look at in light of the fact that we may not even be able to do site visits this year. And so what we're asking you to do, and then in turn would ask the schools to do, would be to sign off on a set of assurances. These assurances would be related to the annual performance framework and the charter performance framework, and they would be around things such as their essential terms that are identified in their contract, their lottery system and recruitment and enrollment, their non-discriminatory admissions, their compulsory attendance, student code of conduct, suspensions and expulsions, enrollment and retention, and then beginning on page 35, identifying at-risk students, conducting evaluations for at-risk students, writing IEPs, providing programming and placement, following discipline procedures, assessments of students with special needs, school meeting the local and state fire and safety codes, health and sanitary codes, the American Disabilities Act, schools following their approved transportation plan, bus safety protocols, maintaining their registered nonprofit status, adhering to the Mississippi Open Meetings Act, and adhering to Public Records Act and FERPA. And so what that would do, and you can see beginning on page 39, that particular document is a framework assurances, and all of the schools would just need to sign off and assure through those statement of assurances that they are indeed in compliance with each one of those standards. This too would give them some relief.
Okay, any questions? Then I will entertain a motion that we approve these acceptance standards. Assurances for accountability. Anyone, please make that motion.
I so move.
Thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The assurances are passed.
Thank you. That'll be great. Thank you. I know the schools will appreciate that too.
Okay. Next.
Yes, thank you. The next item under new business is item C, 2020 Call for Quality Schools Stage 2, the threshold quality review findings. You heard from Sarah a few minutes ago what the findings were from the evaluation committee. And at this point, we would hear from a board member to discuss whether or not we need to make a motion to accept those as they were presented.
Would anyone like to offer that motion?
Yes, I would. This is Carolyn.
Thank you.
So in order to.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, Carolyn, did you have something else to add?
Yes, Dr. Kamachara, we are looking at these three separately, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in order to confirm the eligibility and completeness of the applications and advance them to stage 3 of the evaluation process or deny their application, I move that the board deem Southwest Leadership Academy as incomplete and ineligible and adopt a resolution to deny Southwest Leadership Academy's charter school proposal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Speed. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Is there another motion, please?
Yes. I move that the board deem SRI College Preparatory and STEM Academy as complete and eligible and approve them to move forward to stage 3 of the 2020 Call for Quality Schools Request for Proposal cycle.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
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 Is
And the
there
last-
another motion?
I move that the board deem Voices of Education as complete and eligible and approve them to move forward to stage 3 of the 2020 proposal cycle.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
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 Does that take care of all three of those schools, Dr. K? Okay. Item next.
Okay, item D, in your packet, beginning on page 43, is to consider the approval or the acceptance of the NACSA report. As you all know, we contracted with NACSA through the CSP to do an evaluation on the authorizer board. This was written into the grant originally back in 2017, and NACSA contracted with us. And you can find the review or the evaluation, the purpose and process on page 46. They evaluated us against the principles and standards for quality school authorizing principles. They did a summary of where we are. They did a thorough review and provided summary of recommendations around monitoring, intervention, renewal, expansion, and closure, and provide great detail on the strengths and the opportunities for improvement. Their work is extraordinary. They've been around a long time. They do great work, and they were complementary in the growth that we've been able to make in the past year and a half, and they gave quality recommendations around where we need to continue to grow and improve our practices. And so we were grateful to work with them and grateful for their responses and their support. Additionally, they supported us around our contract and the work on that, as well as the National Resource Center. So I'd just like the board to, at your leisure, take time to read through that. It is well done, well written, and well respected and well received on our end. So.
Okay, any questions about that? And there's no action required other than just do our homework.
Well, I do think we need to approve the report. That'll give us some comfort in moving forward on the recommendations that were provided in the document.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the report?
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The report is approved, and I encourage all the board members to try to read the report in its entirety so we can learn how good we are. Next item, Dr. K.
Yes, sir. Item E is Clarksdale Collegiate CSP grant. It's a no-cost extension request from Clarksdale Collegiate. To give you a little context, Clarksdale was actually approved, but there was no one at the authorizer board her first year of operation, and so they were behind the 8 ball in their spending, and there was that 9-month period where there was really nobody supporting Ms. Johnson in her work, and especially in the CSP grant. And so I don't think the first drawdown was actually done until we came on board. I may be wrong on that. There may have been a couple of things, but she was behind. She didn't have the school didn't have any support, any policies, any practices, any procedures to speak of other than her application, which had been approved. So she's got some money left over, and we'd like to request a no-cost extension so that she can be able to take advantage of all that money that's left in her account. And you can see in year 0 what she spent, year 1, year 2, what that carryover looks like and what her remaining balance is. And you can find that balance on page, see, that balance would be 57, 58, 59 in your packet. And you can see how much she has spent, and again, how much is left over as of July the 21st. There is a letter from Dr. Brumfield in here included that is basically asking the board to approve that so that we can send this off and inform Clarksdale that they have been approved for this no-cost extension.
Any questions? Will someone please make a motion that we approve this request?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Jennifer, are you still with us?
We can't hear you.
She may have gotten. Okay, I think that's Dr. Speed or Mr. Speed. There you are. Uh-oh, you got your mute button is pushed. You got to unmute yourself.
Can't hear her now.
Okay, how about now?
There you go.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you vote yes on that last measure?
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. K.
Oh, okay. Item F on the agenda. Okay, we're getting feedback again. If somebody can mute themselves, please.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. That's going to be the words of the year. If somebody could mute themselves, that is going to be
The most used phrase.
most used phrase for 2020. Okay, so item F is the result of actually 2 incidents coming to our attention where there is the potential for some conflict of interest at the local governing board level of the charter schools. So in conversation with council, with Avery, and with Mr. Billingsley, there has been a decision made to request the board to consider requesting or seeking an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission on whether or not a member of a charter governing board may approve a contract and or invoices of a company in which he or she is employed. And Avery, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, but what is happening is there is the potential for direct or indirect conflict of interest. And I want to make sure that everybody understands it's not about your conflict of interest policy at the school level. It's about the state statute and about how the state statute interprets that, and that we as an authorizer board don't have jurisdiction or authority to make that determination, nor does the AG's office have the authority or jurisdiction to make that. It can only come through the Ethics Commission. And regardless of whether a school has a policy or not, the policy has to track state statute. And so that's why we would like to go out and seek that opinion so that we can make sure everybody has the same support, the same understanding, and that there is not any confusion on who can serve on a board, a governing board 1, and what action they can take 2, or if they need to recuse themselves 3. So there are some things that we don't have those answers to. We want to make sure we're in compliance with state statute, and we want to make sure that we do things that are legal, decent, and in order, and that all of our schools have the same understanding about what this means. So that's where we are with that. And then I'm going to turn it over to Avery to clarify anything I have left out.
I think you laid it out perfectly. It's just that we need to let the Ethics Commission let us know. There's not been an opinion request regarding a charter school yet, ever, to the Ethics Commission. So this is definitely ripe for consideration on their part, and it'll just make sure that invoices we approve as well as the invoices submitted are ones that we can lawfully approve. So I'm happy to assist with drafting the opinion request, and it will go to the Ethics Commission in August, hopefully at their meeting, and they have a very quick turnaround time. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to address them.
I'd also like to add here that one thing that hasn't been talked about is the need to protect the board members from having to write checks to reimburse the state or the federal government for money that was improperly authorized or improperly spent. That has happened and will happen again if we're not very careful. I've been on boards before where it was required that we personally make up the funds that were spent improperly. So this is really to help protect the local board members as much as anything else. We don't want anyone to have to do that. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, what action do you need from the board, Dr. Karmakachara?
We just need permission to move forward with that request.
Can I get a motion for that?
I so moved.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you have permission to move forward with the request from the Ethics Commission.
Thank you, Avery, and I will work on that. Okay, item G is SonicWall Security Services renewal. This is our internet service provider through the, and don't make me try to explain what that is, but because I don't know exactly how that works, but there's some kind of port that comes into our offices. We have 2 of them, and we need to be able to have our internet access port. So that is a renewal request for that particular item. It's found on page 60 in your backup material.
Is that for a year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone have any question? I will entertain a motion to approve this invoice.
So moved.
Second? Is there a second? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item.
Item H is an amendment to the Next Step contract. For those of you that have been on the board, know that when we do meet in person, we sometimes need some technical assistance. And so they have been great to send John over to help us out whenever we need that technical assistance. And this is an amendment to that contract because we did not spend the additional, all of the monies this year. We didn't need them in the spring. So we would just ask that the board consider that.
What is the amendment doing? Is it just extending the contract?
Just extends it. Yep. That's it.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment. Anyone?
So moved.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, item I.
Next item.
Item I is an MOU between the Institute of Higher Learning and the Authorizer Board. This is just an annual agreement that we have had since we began operations back in 2013-14. And the details of that MOU are outlined on page 62, 63, and 64. But basically, it delineates the difference of who is responsible for what and who is eligible for what. So that's the best way to describe that. It just delineates responsibilities and authority within that MOU.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I so moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Next.
Item J is our office lease. That's an annual lease that we get from the Department of Finance and Administration. There is zero cost to that. It's just a sign off on the director signs off and we sign off and we're good to go for another year.
Any questions? I will entertain a motion to approve.
I so moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Is there any need for us to go into executive session today?
There is none. No, sir.
Is there any need for us to go into executive session? No. Okay. Well, then let's open the public portion of the meeting.
Did you want to reiterate the policy about that, Mr. Billingsley?
Oh, okay, sure. I appreciate the people who have taken the trouble to show up today to give us their feedback. All I would say is that you talk about things that were on the agenda today. We're restricted from bringing up new business in a public meeting. It has to be something that was on the agenda. And also try to restrict your comments to 5 minutes or so. We'll be as flexible as we can, but the rule is 5 minutes for public comments. So with that, who has any comments that they would like to make for the record?
I think Jordan has a list. Do you have those in order, Jordan? For the people that signed up?
Yes, ma'am. We can begin with LaFleur Legacy, Miss Emily.
Great. Hi, y'all. Give me 1 second to pull up my notes. Ooh. Okay. First, I want to thank each and every one of you for your time and investment in charter schools and expanding educational opportunities in Mississippi. Furthermore, I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Emily Couples. I'm the board president of LaFleur Legacy Academy. I wanted to note I was excited when I learned Mississippi was embracing school choice and opening its doors to charters. I thought it would be met with the same eager hope and passion throughout the process by all. However, I was wrong. To fuel this work, I've met with funders from grants, from Gates, Walton, and the Broad Foundation. I have good working relationships with these grant managers because they fund charter schools in other states I work with, as well as a previous career background. When approached about our work in Mississippi, they said, "We don't do Mississippi. Good luck with that bureaucracy." Having dealt with the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board for almost 3 years now, I do not agree with their statements, but I understand their hesitation and lack of confidence in the state's ability. Once our school was approved, I assumed the relationship with the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board would be much more collaborative. After all, they are our partner in this work. It has not been. There's been little to zero guidance for our charters building year from the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board staff. Our board has not heard from staff until they reached out about an alleged conflict of interest, which is worth noting. The board president was incorrectly identified, if that tells you how little support or involvement we've had from the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board and staff. We're 1 week out from the start of school, and rather than focusing on opening a first-year school during a pandemic, we're spending the Authorizer Board's time and LaFleur Legacy's attention addressing a redundant issue. It truly is disheartening. Ego and personal agendas are getting in the way of doing what's best for our children. We've clarified multiple times. Our board member took no part in a vote to approve a professional development for Corinne Education Partners through the PD that was sought after and approved by our executive director, which she has full authority granted from our board to do so within guidelines. I'm asking the board today to reconsider and rescind their vote on the matter and allow our governing board, Dr. Shaw, and our school staff to focus on what's important right now, and that's giving Mississippi students the education they need and deserve. Furthermore, I hope you'll take the words I've said today and take affirmative action towards Mississippi's charter networks and not allow us to continue to be the state folks say we don't do. Thank you for your time, and I'll yield to the next person.
Thank you. Who is next?
That would also be from LaFleur Legacy, Dr. Tamala Boydshaw.
Thank you, Jordan. Good afternoon, Mississippi Charter Authorizer School Board staff and board members. I appreciate the time that I'm given this afternoon to come before you. So just to start out, I just want to recall the date of September 9th when not this exact board, but the then Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board approved LaFleur Legacy Academy to open in the fall of 2020, this fall. Even before that approval, and especially since that approval, I have worked tirelessly, unconditionally, yet enthusiastically to make our purpose of a high quality charter school for our community a promise for them. Now, having been a charter school leader for over 5 years and having vast experience working with charter schools, I certainly expected nothing but greatness from the office of the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board, because that's what I saw when we first began this process in 2018. There was clarity, there was support, there was guidance, and there was information. I am saddened to not be able to say that today. As a new charter leader in the state of Mississippi, I have struggled to find the guidance and support needed. I've experienced at least 2 instances in communication seeking support that landed, unfortunately, on deaf ears. In an effort to ensure I was aligning with the expectations of the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board, I requested the development of a repository of some sort, exemplar documents, and maybe even a checklist for things a new charter leader in Mississippi would need to know and or do to be set up for a success. That was not provided. Most recently, and as you have heard today, the executive director feels it important and necessary to bring before this board a request for a Mississippi Ethics Commission opinion about a reimbursement request, which, by the way, was pulled immediately upon learning of the concern. This action feels very punitive as opposed to supportive, something that we as charter school leaders and especially new leaders need. So considering the still newness of charter schools in the state of Mississippi, I asked the board to consider the implications on advancing the work of charter schools in Mississippi, what this kind of leadership and experience will do for future charter leaders in Mississippi. As you've heard, board members, during a time such as this, when we are trying to open a school during a global pandemic, it is even more stressful to deal with formal memos, condemning emails, and even conversations that leave you feeling disheartened with people who are supposed to support and guide us as charter leaders. My ask too of this board is for you to rescind the vote, to move forward with the request and instead show support for our governing boards that are already difficult to pull together and maintain. If the vote is not rescinded, I do ask at minimum for immediate follow-up from the staff and clear guidance and support on such reimbursement requests. I've heard that our governing board's conflict of interest policy is not the policy in question, but I do want to note that that is the policy that was approved with our approved charter school application. Board members, we are here for the children and we need people to be here for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jordan, who's next?
We have from Ambition Prep, Mr. D. Archie Scott.
DeArchie, you there?
Yes, sir. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I'm going to be very quick. The agenda item that I was speaking on, which was, I believe, 8F, has already been voted on, so I'm going to keep it brief. And I did have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Parmachara earlier today. So I want to say that, and just from reading the agenda item also, it doesn't, and what was voted on, it doesn't apply to Ambition Prep. But if it does, we just ask that we are part of this process, as we do have a better understanding of what would be needed and what should be provided, and our policies and procedures on the charter school side. That's all that I ask of. Yes. And that if there is an actual policy in place to determine if we are in violation of any conflict of interest. And if not, then I think that just may be an overkill or just may turn into something that's arbitrary. That's it. And Dr. Billis, thank you for also explaining your side during that discussion. And that was helpful to hear more about the reason for making that vote.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others, Jordan?
No, sir, not that was requested prior to the meeting.
Avery, do you want to speak just a little bit more so that we can make sure that the board has clarity and doesn't have any additional questions around that?
I'm happy to answer any questions. This, just so you understand my involvement in this as the legal counsel for the board, when Lisa noticed, or I'm not sure Vanda noticed it or Lisa did first, noticed the invoice and that there may be a possible issue regarding the approval by the board, the charter school authorizer board, she did bring it to me. And I am the one who told her that I thought it would be important for us, or for you as a board, to make the request to the Ethics Commission so that we could have an idea of their interpretation as to, number one, whether they consider charter schools to be a public entity, which I think they obviously do, because they're covered in the Public Records Act and many other, tort claims board, you know, all of those things are covered in those acts as well. But that is a question that needs to be answered. And then regarding whether or not board members of the charter board are able to serve on the board and vote on things, and even not vote on something, but just by merely being on the board, if that could somehow have some indirect interest that they would gain, is an important question, because if it is deemed to be so, and the Ethics Commission would rule that way, then any approvals that the board makes of those invoices would also be deemed in their eyes to be approval of unlawful claims by the charter authorizer board. And that's why I recommended that they do seek it not only for clarity for the charter governing board, but also for clarity for you, the board, the charter authorizer board here today, so that you make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to. And we do know that in the past there have been not knowing that you're making an approval of something that would be deemed unlawful, but the board has in the past made one approval and they didn't realize it was something that shouldn't have been approved, and the board had to pay that money back, which they were happy to do because they wanted to make it right. But I think that the right thing to do is to ask the question on the front end rather on the back end, and that's simply the only reason we're doing this. My recommendation was not in any way to punish any school. I'm just trying to make sure that legally we're doing the things that are required as a state agency, and that the charter schools are doing the things that they're supposed to, and they're not doing anything that would be deemed unlawful either in the eyes of the Ethics Commission, and that they would come back and get admonished for. So that's where I was coming from, and I just wanted to make sure you understood it wasn't directed at any particular school or any type of punishment. It's just to make sure everyone's doing the right thing and that we move forward in the right way as a group. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them regarding the process for the request or any other question you might have.
See a question from Tamala.
Thank you for recognizing me on it, and I appreciate the clarification. And if this is the appropriate time to say so, I want to emphasize what I asked for at the beginning is the immediate follow-up for what those steps could be. I mean, because this opinion, if it's an opinion that will guide the next steps and what our action step would be to remove board members, I just think that is harsh punishment, especially when it's so hard to get board members to serve in this new world of work. So I would ask that you all take into consideration what board membership means, this voluntary work that boards do. Also, I would ask, for some differentiation of what goes on. It should take into account, I would think, in some means that when a request is made for reimbursement of funds and one is denied, is there pushback or is there acceptance of it? Because as I noted, this reimbursement request, which was pulled, still seemed to get the kind of roll forwards team that it started with without regard to the action that was taken after that. Of course, we respect authority and we respect processes and policies. If we don't have processes and policies, things go awry. But we feel like it is best that these things are known beforehand than during the time when something happens, and then you have all of this kind of back and forth that is unnecessary. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I requested the opportunity for public comment, but it came in during the meeting. Am I allowed to offer public comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Hi, board members. My name is Katie Poulos. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Republic Schools. As Ms. Couples did, I want to thank you for your work. I am familiar with the work that you do, having been an authorizing staff in Arizona and in New Mexico for 6 years. I know the difficulty of this work. I also know the importance and the value of this work. I just wanted to address a couple of the items. I did anticipate that because we were the entity that had raised concerns about the charter contract and asked for revisions, that those would be, we would be given an opportunity to speak with you about those today. I understand that you are still going to consider the feedback we gave you and the redlined version that we have asked. And so look forward to that opportunity. I think what would be very helpful is just some clarity on what that process is. We in fact had asked Dr. K for that clarity when this conversation started about what is the process and how will we engage in those conversations. And we still don't have that clarity. And so just understanding how we're going to engage in that conversation would be very helpful. And I want to also say thank you for removing the items that were raised. Those certainly do address some of the concerns, but not all of the concerns with regards to those contract revisions. In my feedback, I had also asked, and this goes to items today on the agenda, the public comment, as well as I would say maybe the approval of the NACSA report, which is we as representatives of the schools would like to be engaged in a collaborative authorization process. It's something that, again, for 6 years, I learned very quickly that lesson, and also how valuable that was to engage with my schools. And so just ask that we be given more information and feedback and opportunity to engage so that we can truly engage in a collaborative process. I don't think anybody that is not on the board has seen that NACSA report. I think that would be valuable for us to see and be able to engage on those recommendations. I think certainly even seeing those waiver requests would have been helpful for us to be able to provide feedback. And so just ask that we continue to have the opportunity to engage with you in a way that allows us to work collaboratively to improve your authorizing practices, which are so important. And again, I recognize so very difficult at all levels.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for that, because you're exactly right. They are challenging. And that's really why it was important to us to get some feedback from you guys. And in fact, I think it was July the 9th that was my second email about input, trying to get some input from the school leaders about the waivers in particular. And I don't recall getting any. I don't know that maybe Jordan or Amanda got any specifics, not at all, that we didn't receive anything with respect to any conversations around what might be important around waivers or what might not be important. So we collectively, just as a team, went through the entire framework and did the best that we could without any input from the schools that, for whatever reason, chose not to respond. So thank you for your comments, Seth.
Are there any other public comments? Katie, I would like to address the process question that you had. We are in the middle of trying to address the other changes that you all have requested with your contract, and we have people that will be meeting this week, and I'm sure that you'll be notified, or someone will be notified as to what we need to, how we can get together and try to get these other issues resolved. The 31st is Friday, so we need to get moving on it. So, but we've already got a meeting scheduled for tomorrow to try to kick the process off. So we'll keep you informed.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it.
The last thing that I'd like to say, if I may, Mr. Billingsley, is just context for new board members around the contract in particular. When we started this work on the contract and revising the contract, our goal initially was to ensure that we had an alignment between the contract, the framework, and the framework, the contract, and the statute. And so Avery and I began conversations about that almost day one when I got to the authorizer. And so those conversations have been ongoing, knowing that there were some misalignments between all of those documents. And so having the support from legal, having the support from the National Resource Center, and the support from NACSA, that's been invaluable to us, and we really appreciate all that work. The contract itself, for some context for you, when we looked at it, we did a crosswalk. And so in some of the notes that we received and some of the comments we received, there were about 12 areas of concern, and I'll just use that in that way, that we looked at, and much of that was in the original contract. So I think there was one substantive change according to our perception from that, and Avery's perception of that. But the contract work is ongoing, and in also, before we began that, one of the things that was really important to me was to know whether or not schools had actually had an opportunity to negotiate contracts before. And in talking to former board members who were actually founding board members, they were not given that specific opportunity to engage in negotiation in the original back in 2014-15 I guess 14. And so they weren't actually given that opportunity. Rather, they were given that opportunity through their application process and talking about their essential terms and mission and essential terms. Those were the contract negotiations. The rest of that contract was a standard contract. And I think Avery can speak to that as well, that those were standard contracts. Much of the contract is statutory. So there's very little in there that we can quote unquote negotiate. So I think it's really important for board members to understand that, especially for those of you that haven't been here and haven't had an opportunity to work in the weeds with us on things like contracts. So hopeful that the contract committee that gets together this week is able to iron out some of those changes and challenges that we've run across and continue to use the best practices that have been recommended by NACSA and the National Resource Center, and ensure that we do have a very clean, supportive contract that respects the autonomy of the schools and yet gives us the oversight and accountability responsibilities that we have by statute and that we're required to do. So hopefully that gives you some context. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions of anyone? Are there any other comments from the public? If not, then we will close the public comment session and move to the next item on our agenda, which is to set the meeting date for the next meeting. September 14th is what's on the agenda. Does that work okay for everyone? We don't know yet whether we will be in person or Zoom. As we have shown, we're nimble and we can react quickly if we need to. So let's just, does the 1 o'clock in the afternoon time work okay for everyone? I think that probably is best if we go to an in-person meeting. It makes it easier for people who are farther away to make it into town and get home at a reasonable time. So if nobody has any objection, we'll go with September. Let me have a motion to go with September 14th at 1 o'clock for our next meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, September 14th at 1 o'clock, and we will be in touch with the agenda and the minutes, just like we always are, to and let you know at that point whether we're looking at an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting. Is there any other, Dr. K, any other business that you would like for us to talk about today?
Good to go.
In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.